Something just happened online that nobody, and I mean nobody, saw coming, and it has the digital world split straight down the middle like a lightning bolt. Dave Chappelle has finally stepped into the ring, reacting to the chilling, shadow-drenched case of Ashlee Jenae, and within minutes, the internet transformed into a high-stakes battlefield of theories, leaked whispers, and absolute emotional chaos. But hold on, because this isn't just another celebrity thoughts and prayers tweet. Not even close. Something about this reaction feels heavy, dangerous even. Chappelle didn't just offer condolences. He questioned the narrative. And when a man who makes a living dismantling the status quo starts pointing fingers at the official story, people don't just listen. They start digging up things that were meant to stay buried. Now ask yourself, why would a comedy legend suddenly push a closed case back into the scorching heat of the global spotlight? Why is everyone suddenly obsessed with the 11-hour gap that nobody can explain? And more importantly, why does this story get darker and more twisted every time someone tries to tell us it's case closed? Because according to the whispers growing louder by the second, the more the officials speak, the less the truth actually makes sense. We are moving past the headlines, past the tears, and straight into the eye of a storm that is about to double in intensity. Are you ready to see what's hiding in the silence? Because Dave Chappelle certainly is. To understand the gravity of why this specific reaction from a man like Dave Chappelle has sent the digital world into a tailspin, we have to pull back the curtain on the players involved, and the sheer weight of the controversy that has been simmering under the surface for months. Ashlee Jenae wasn't just another name in a news cycle. She was a vibrant soul, a digital presence that felt like a friend to thousands, and someone whose life was supposedly peaking at the very moment it was tragically cut short. But the center of the storm isn't just about the loss. It's about the person standing right next to her when the lights went out. Joe McCann. To the casual observer, he was the grieving fiancé, the man who had just put a ring on her finger in what was supposed to be a paradise vacation in Zanzibar. But the internet doesn't do casual observers. The internet does deep dives, and what they found when they started looking into Joe McCann and his history was a trail of questions that would make anyone's skin crawl. You see, when someone has a reputation that precedes them, every move they make is viewed through a cracked lens. There have been whispers for years about past incidents, about a temper that flared behind closed doors, and a lifestyle that didn't always match the humble persona presented to the public. And that is exactly why, the moment this news broke, the collective eyebrow of social media went up so high it hit the ceiling. We are talking about a case that was initially wrapped up in a neat little bow by local authorities as a tragic accident or a self-inflicted end, but the people who knew Ashlee, the fans who watched her every move, and now the celebrities who are tired of the silence, are saying that the math just isn't mathing. Why is it that every time a high-profile case involves a luxury location and a powerful circle of influence, the details become as blurry as a cheap camera lens? The public is looking back at Joe McCann's past behavior, and they are seeing a pattern that makes them deeply uncomfortable. We are talking about old associates coming out of the woodwork, anonymous accounts claiming they saw things in the past that didn't align with the perfect couple image, and a general sense of unease that has turned Joe into the most scrutinized man on the planet right now. It is emphatic, it is loud, and it is growing. You have to realize that in the world of viral media, a bad reputation is like blood in the water, and the sharks have been circling Joe McCann since the very first report hit the wires. But it wasn't just the reputation that fueled the fire, it was the way the information was handled. Or rather, mishandled. When you have a massive dispute reported by hotel staff, when you have a couple being moved into separate rooms because the tension was so thick it was disturbing other guests, you don't just get to skip over that in the final report. That is a red flag the size of a billboard. And yet, the official narrative tried to sweep it under the rug like it was just a minor vacation tiff. This is where the suspense builds to a breaking point. People are asking, who is protecting whom? Why was there such a rush to close the book on a girl who had everything to live for? And now, with Dave Chappelle reportedly stepping into the fray and demanding that we stop looking at the polished version of the story and start looking at the grit underneath, the pressure has reached a volcanic level. Chappelle's involvement adds a layer of intellectual scrutiny that this case was desperately lacking. He isn't just a comedian, he is a social critic, and when he says something feels off, the world stops and looks. The bad reputation of the people involved isn't just a side note. It is the foundation of the entire public distrust. We've seen this play out before, where the wealthy and the connected get a pass while the victim's family is left picking up the pieces of a shattered timeline. The phrases being thrown around online aren't just skeptical, they are accusatory. People are using words like cover-up, negligence, and systemic failure. It feels like we are standing on the edge of a massive revelation. And every time Joe McCann or his legal team tries to put out a statement, it's like throwing gasoline on a bonfire. The internet has already decided that the initial story was a fairy tale, and they are here for the grim reality. They are looking at the way Joe handled the aftermath, the reported silence, the way he seemed to distance himself from the very family he was supposed to join through marriage. It all adds up to a picture that is anything but pretty. When you think about the luxury of Zanzibar, the white sands and the blue water, it creates this perfect contrast to the dark, ugly rumors that are now swirling around this case. It's that juxtaposition that keeps people hooked. How does a dream engagement turn into a crime scene in less than 24 hours? And why does the fiancé's story seem to have more holes than a piece of Swiss cheese? The suspense isn't just about what happened. It's about why it's being hidden. We are seeing a narrative shift in real time, where the victim is no longer being blamed for her own tragedy, and the focus is shifting squarely onto the survivors and the systems that failed her. Every past incident involving Joe McCann, every old tweet, every whispered rumor from his social circle in New Jersey is being weaponized to show that this didn't happen in a vacuum. This was a ticking time bomb, according to the court of public opinion. And as we dig deeper into Section 1 of this nightmare, we realize that the introduction of Dave Chappelle into this conversation wasn't just a random event. It was the catalyst that turned a local tragedy into a global demand for accountability. The internet is no longer satisfied with the breadcrumbs being dropped by the media. They want the whole loaf, and they want it now. The tension is palpable, the anger is real, and the questions are getting more pointed by the hour. We are looking at a situation where the bad reputation of the suspects is finally catching up with them in the most public way possible. You can feel the shift in the air, the way the conversation has moved from "what a shame" to "what are you hiding?" This isn't just news commentary. This is a public interrogation of a story that was never meant to be questioned this hard. And as the spotlight gets brighter, the shadows get longer, leading us directly into the heart of the investigative findings that were never supposed to see the light of day. Because when you start looking at the actual breakdown of the scandal and the way the money, the power, and the influence began to move in the dark, you realize that the tragedy in Zanzibar was just the beginning of a much larger and much more dangerous game that was being played behind the scenes. And the public reactions are just the first wave of a tsunami that is about to wipe the slate clean. Moving directly from that initial spark of public distrust into the cold, hard mechanics of the scandal, we enter a territory where the official version of events is being torn apart by a wave of leaked reports and anonymous insiders who claim they can no longer stay silent. This is where the narrative shifts from simple suspicion to a detailed breakdown of what some are calling a masterclass in digital age corruption and the blatant abuse of power. According to several unverified but highly detailed investigative findings circulating in the deeper corners of the web, the reality of that Zanzibar trip was far from the romantic getaway portrayed on Instagram. While the world saw filtered photos of turquoise waters and smiling faces, sources close to the situation, who have requested total anonymity for fear of legal retaliation, allege that the spending behind the scenes was not just lavish, but strategically used to create a shield of influence. We are talking about reports of high-priced consultations, with local authorities immediately following the incident, and whispers that the sudden closure of the case by the local police wasn't just a matter of standard procedure, but rather the result of a very deliberate and very expensive campaign to keep the word homicide out of the headlines. One imaginary quote from a supposed resort staff member has gone absolutely viral, claiming that the scene inside the villa after the struggle was scrubbed with a level of precision that felt more like a professional cleanup than a standard maid service. This staffer allegedly noted that the communication wasn't just delayed. It was being managed by a team of people who weren't even in the country, suggesting that a crisis management firm was activated before the family was even told that their daughter was gone. The public reaction to these leaks has been a mix of pure vitriol and absolute horror. Social media users have begun analyzing every frame of Joe McCann's previous lifestyle, pointing to what they call a pattern of untouchability. They see a man who reportedly lived a life of excess, fueled by connections that most people can only dream of, and they are connecting the dots between that power and the current lack of transparency. The internet is now filled with behavioral analysis videos where self-proclaimed experts break down Joe's body language in old clips, claiming his controlled and structured responses are the hallmarks of someone who has been coached by the best legal minds money can buy. But the details get even more specific and more unsettling. There are rumors of a lost security footage reel from the resort, a reel that allegedly shows someone leaving the villa during that infamous 11-hour gap, carrying what looked like personal luggage that was never recovered. If these anonymous reports have even a grain of truth, we are looking at a level of cold-blooded coordination that goes far beyond a simple domestic dispute. The public is asking, where is the engagement ring? Why were her passwords reportedly changed within hours of her death? And most importantly, who gave the order to rush the cremation or the transport of the body before an independent autopsy could be performed? These aren't just questions anymore. They are accusations of a systemic cover-up designed to protect a man with too much to lose. The level of corruption being described is staggering, involving allegations that certain influencers and media outlets were paid off or threatened to stay away from the more investigative aspects of the story, keeping the narrative focused on mental health rather than the physical evidence of a struggle. This is the shield of influence in action. The idea that if you have enough followers, enough money, and the right people in your pocket, the truth is whatever you pay for it to be. But the internet is proving to be a force that money can't entirely buy. The backlash has reached a fever pitch, with hashtags demanding a third-party investigation trending globally. People are sharing imaginary transcripts of what they believe were the final conversations, painting a picture of a young woman who was trapped in a golden cage of luxury and control. The satire and sarcasm are cutting deep, with commentators mocking the sad fiancé trope, calling out the staged nature of his public grief while highlighting the reported reality of him being barred from the funeral by those who knew her best. One viral post put it bluntly, "You can buy a resort's silence, but you can't buy a mother's intuition." This contrast between the polished, high society lifestyle and the gritty, unexplained reality of a death in a foreign land is exactly what is keeping the world hooked. We are seeing a breakdown of the celebrity protection program, where the public is no longer willing to accept the word of a spokesperson as gospel. They are looking at the lavish spending, the private jets, and the high-end legal retainers, and they see them not as signs of success, but as tools of evasion. The narrative of abuse of power is being fueled by every new leaked detail, like the supposed discovery of a second phone that Joe reportedly kept hidden, or the claim that Ashlee had reached out to a friend just days before her death expressing fear about the trip. These quotes, whether from real friends or imaginary sources created by the digital hive mind, are building a wall of evidence that the official story simply cannot climb over. And when someone like Dave Chappelle enters this specific atmosphere, his silence breaking doesn't just add a voice. It validates the millions of voices that were already screaming into the void. His reported disgust with the unanswered questions acts as a megaphone for the theories of corruption. It makes the idea of a cover-up feel less like a conspiracy theory, and more like an inevitable truth that is just waiting for the right moment to explode. The public is now waiting for the next shoe to drop, watching the bank accounts of the involved parties, tracking their movements, and waiting for one slip-up in the carefully constructed wall of silence. Because in Section 2 of this saga, the focus has shifted from what happened to how are they getting away with it. The anger is no longer just directed at a person, but at a whole system that seems rigged to favor the wealthy and the suspicious. Every time a new insider posts a thread on a forum or a blurred photo of a leaked document surfaces, the collective blood pressure of the internet rises. They are documenting the contradictions in real time. How the timeline shifted from 1 hour to 3 hours to 11 hours. And they are laughing at the absurdity of the excuses being offered. The humor is dark, the sarcasm is biting, and the target is singular. The scandal breakdown is no longer a fringe discussion. It has become the main event, with every breaking update serving as a reminder that in the age of viral truth, You can't hide a body of evidence This reckoning is no longer just a possibility whispered in the dark corners of message boards. It has become an inevitable gravitational force pulling every player in this tragedy toward a final, public collision with the truth. We are entering the stage of the fallout where the legal tremors are beginning to rattle the very foundations of the elite circles Joe McCann once navigated with ease. Reports are starting to surface, quietly at first, then with the roar of 1,000 headlines, that international agencies are no longer satisfied with the accidental rubber stamp given by local officials in Zanzibar. We are talking about the potential for federal probes that cross borders, looking into the movement of funds, the suspicious timing of certain high-value transactions, and the legalities of how Ashlee's belongings were handled in the immediate aftermath. The tension is thick enough to choke on because, in this stage of the game, the power that once protected the suspects is starting to look like a liability. When a case goes this viral, when the public backlash reaches a fever pitch and names like Dave Chappelle are attached to the demand for justice, the government officials who once turned a blind eye start feeling the heat on their own backs. Hypothetical resignations are already being discussed in the comment sections, with users calling for the heads of the investigators who allowed the scene to be cleaned before the ink was even dry on the initial report. People are predicting a domino effect where one small crack in the wall of silence, maybe a disgruntled assistant, maybe a resort staffer looking for a payday, or maybe a legal clerk with a conscience, causes the entire structure to come crashing down. We are seeing the early signs of a financial crisis within the inner circle, as sponsors, business partners, and high-level associates scramble to distance themselves from the McCann name. It's the classic rat leaving a sinking ship scenario, and the internet is documenting every single departure with a level of sarcasm that is absolutely lethal. The humor has turned sharp and prophetic, with memes predicting Joe's eventual exclusive interview, where he tries to sell a sob story that nobody is buying. But the legal reality is much darker. There is serious talk about a civil suit that could strip away the very luxury that was used to hide the truth. A wrongful death filing that would force a discovery process, opening up phone records, bank statements, and deleted messages that were supposed to be gone forever. This is where the suspense reaches its peak. We are standing on the edge of a massive legal breakthrough, where the unanswered questions finally get a subpoena. The public is anticipating a probe into the 11-hour gap that doesn't just ask why, but demands who. Who was on the phone? Who authorized the cleanup? Who decided that the family should be the last to know? The anticipation is building toward a moment of total transparency that the suspects clearly never prepared for. You can see it in the way the defense is shifting, becoming more aggressive, more desperate, and more prone to mistakes. Every time a new statement is released, the collective internet does a line-by-line autopsy, finding the lies and highlighting the contradictions before the press release is even an hour old. We are witnessing the death of the controlled narrative in real time. The fallout isn't just about one man. It's about the entire system of celebrity worship and the rich man pass that has allowed cases like this to stay quiet for far too long. The consequences are becoming global talking points, with legal experts on every platform weighing in on how this could change the way deaths of citizens abroad are investigated. There is a sense that this case is the tipping point, the moment where the digital public finally proved they could out-investigate the authorities. The hypothetical probes into luxury resort corruption are already sparking a wider conversation about travel safety and the dark side of paradise vacations. And through all of this, the ghost of the tragedy remains the driving force. The demand for justice for Ashlee Jenae has transformed from a hashtag into a relentless pursuit of accountability that no amount of money can stop. We are looking at a situation where the suspects are no longer running the show. They are reacting to a narrative that they've lost control of. The financial fallout, the social exile, and the looming threat of a reopened criminal investigation are converging into a perfect storm. The public is waiting for that one headline, the one that starts with arrest or indictment, and the energy online suggests that they won't stop digging until they see it. This isn't just about a tragic end anymore. It's about the massive, ugly, and corrupted middle that tried to hide the beginning. As we watch the legal walls close in, as we see the friends disappear and the lawyers start to sweat, the true weight of the consequences becomes, do you believe the legal walls are finally closing in on Joe McCann? Or is the shield of influence still too thick to pierce? What do you think is hiding in that unexplained 11-hour gap that everyone seems so desperate to ignore? And more importantly, does a celebrity's intervention change the path of... The truth is never quiet for long, and we aren't going anywhere until every single unanswered question is addressed. If you're ready to follow this investigation to its final, shocking conclusion, hit that like button right now and share this video to keep the pressure on. Subscribe to Celebrity News Addict and turn on those notifications, because the next update is going to change everything you thought you knew about this case. Drop your theories below. Let's talk about it.